Hello everyone! In this video, I'll be showing you how to make this DNA jar inspired by the song DNA by BTS. First, I took a clean glass jar and measured the cylindrical portion of the jar. Then I marked the measurement on a white A4 size paper and cut that out, keeping the other piece to draw the designs. I made sure that this goes nicely around the inside of the jar and then marked the excess paper and cut that out. I made two separate lines 2 centimeters away from the edges. Then I cut these out to use them later for the background. On the other piece of paper, I drew some drawings from the music video that I wanted on the jar. I outlined some of these with a waterproof black gel pen. Here are the list of clothings where I got the designs from. Then I colored these. I colored their outfits with primary colors and kept their original hair colors. Most of these I colored according to their clothings, whereas some, such as the flowers, I colored in my own way. I added some final details with a white gel pen. And then cut these out, leaving a white border around them. Next, I cut out a strip of paper and made sure it fits the jar horizontally. On this, I created a rainbow pattern similar to that on J-Hope's sweater. I wanted this to be about 1.5 centimeters wide, so I cut that out accordingly. Then I cut out the BTS symbol as well. To create the moon, I first used tape to draw a circle. Then I covered the circle with clear water and dabbed some black watercolor paint on it. I smudged all of this with a dry paintbrush and then let it dry. Then I created some random marks with more black paint. After that was dry, I added some dots with white paint to make some craters. Then I drew some details around the craters with a gray color pencil. And added some final details on the moon with white and silver gel pens. Then I cut this out along the pencil line. And now these are ready for gluing. I started applying white glue to the base of the jar to glue the BTS logo first. Then I applied another layer of glue over this since I'll be painting over it later. Then I marked the area of where I'll be gluing the tiger, making sure that the glue will cover the entire design. I glued these on the inside of the jar because I wanted the outside of the jar to remain waterproof. I wanted to glue this one in between the two lines of the background. then glued the moon directly on top of them. I added a layer of glue on the moon since I'll be painting over it later. Similarly, I glued the other designs on the jar, making sure that the glue covers the drawings completely. To fill up the space here, I made a 7 based on the jersey Suga was wearing, and then glued it onto the jar. Next is the background. Using the bottom piece of paper, I briefly marked the area for drawing the sun. Then I properly drew the sun and the skyline. Then I lightly erased the pencil marks and colored this with marker pens. On the middle piece, I decided to paint these two backgrounds. I briefly drew the first background and then painted over it with acrylic paint. On the remaining white space, I painted the marbling effect. With the first color, I painted random lines and swirls. With the second color, I painted some thin lines around the yellow. Then I added more lines and swirls around or within the first two colors. Then I glued these onto the jar, starting with the smaller piece. Since these pieces were much bigger, I had to glue these in place before the glue dried. On yellow A4 size paper, I used the other piece to measure the length of the fence. I cut out two pieces that were 0.5 centimeters wide. Then I cut out two more of these to further cut them into smaller pieces. I measured the length required from the background till the rim of the jar and then cut out 10 pieces of the same size. I glued these onto the jar, starting with the longer pieces. I applied a layer of glue over these to prevent the paint from seeping into the paper. I mixed some white acrylic paint with white glue and painted some clouds on the inside of the jar. Then I painted over all of this with light blue paint mixed with white glue. The glue makes it easier to paint on glass. On the bottom of the jar, I created a ring of white paint. Then I painted this galaxy at the base of the jar with pink, purple, and neon acrylic paint. I first painted a messy circle around the logo with neon paint, and then dabbed some pink paint around the neon. I painted the center and near the edge of the jar with purple paint. finally painted the entire base dark blue. Now that the inside of the jar is complete, I cleaned the outside of the jar with nail polish remover to remove any glue or paint residue. Using red 3D glitter glue, I wrote the word love all around the white part of the jar. This was inspired by the red and white sweater that Suga was wearing. I wrote one of them in gold, inspired by Jungkook's red t-shirt. Using white 3D paint tube, I created some outlines and wrote the following lyrics on the jar. Then I hot glued a baby pink ribbon and wrapped it around the rim of the jar. To make the DNA strand, I joined two yellow pipe cleaners together and used a marker to create the shape of a DNA like so. I joined the two ends together and then took a pink Scoobi string to create the nitrogenous bases on the strand. For this, I cut out 6 big pieces and 12 smaller pieces, then glued them onto the DNA strand with the big piece in the center, with the smaller pieces next to them. Next, I folded a pink pipe cleaner into a bow like this. I attached the ends to the center of the bow and then cut the folds. I wanted this bow to look somewhat like a DNA, so I glued some nitrogenous bases onto this as well. Then I first chose the part where I'll attach the bow. Then I hot glued the DNA strand and the bow onto the rim of the jar. Next, I added some gems onto the jar. I used some half pearl stickers for the lights and added a cluster of silver gems inspired by the collar of the shirt that Jin was wearing over here. And it's ready! Thank you so much for watching this tutorial, and I hope you give it a try. Have fun and take care.